Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, so my name is Donald Blessing. I'm a Laravel Pro developer. I've been developing with Laravel for the past 6 years, and it has been fun so far. Today, I'll be doing a presentation on optimization of your Laravel performance. Can you see my screen? So today, we'll be talking about performance optimization in Laravel. One of the strengths of any website, whether Laravel or whatever framework you're using, it's the performance of that website. How fast you can retrieve your data, how fast you can store your data, or even view different aspects of the website as the case may be. And Laravel is no different in that regard. So as a result, you have when developing using Laravel, you have to know how to optimize your application so that it will be fast. During the early days of Laravel started out as Lumen. When it was Lumen, we found out that Lumen was very slim and could not be used for a lot of things. So Laravel was born. Laravel is a framework that is also born out of the Symfony framework. So for the sake of this presentation, we'll be talking about optimizing Laravel. So first of all, we need to know what optimization is. First definition is the action of making the best of or most use of a situation or resource. The second definition is the act or process or methodology of making something such as a design, a system, or a decision as fully perfect, functional, or effective as possible. Optimization is the process of improving a portfolio, algorithm, or trading system to reduce costs or increase efficiency. Optimization is the act of changing an existing process in order to increase the occurrence of favorable outcomes and decrease the occurrence of undesirable outcomes. Now, from all these definitions, certain things are common in them. Number one, use of resource. And number two, having the desirable outcome. In other words, get the best using as low as small a resource as you can from what you have. So optimization basically is getting a very good product using not too many resources per se. So one of two, there are two basically two benefits or three benefits of optimization in Laravel. The one, you have a smoother development environment. Traffic is handled better, even when your server is not up to par. And then you have less bugs and easier bug tracking. So there are three areas where you optimize in a Laravel application or whatever application you're building. Number one is the database layer, where your storage for your data. It doesn't matter the database engine you're using. It could be PostgreSQL, it could be MySQL, it could be Microsoft SQL, it could be Oracle. It doesn't matter, but you have to optimize it. The second layer is the service layer. In some other development environments, you can call it the application layer. Most of us call it the backend, where all business logic takes place and all transactions take place before it gets to the database. And then you have the user interface, which is what people see first when they visit your website. They see your images, they see your texts and the way they are laid out. They enjoy the beauty. The responsiveness is a problem, and the retrieval of data is also a problem. That's where your user interface comes. So for the database layer, we talk about the database. And in the case of Laravel, we use eloquent models to access the database tables and columns. The design of a database can contribute to how fast or slow your application is. In fact, in some quarters, a properly designed database solves 60% of the optimization problems as retrieving records becomes easier and faster for the database needs. Also, how you use your queries matters a lot. We have seen cases where people multiply queries to retrieve records that you can use one query, thereby causing the backend or the database layer to be slow. And then they blame it on the database technology and say, no, we should not be using ISAM. Let's go and be using the new one. So to optimize your
Yes, sir.
database layer,
Yes, sir.
to optimize your database layer, you can hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. It's
Can
somehow echoing. The audio is not
I can hear on my end.
It's not echoing. Let me.
It's not
okay.
echoing, no. I can hear on my end.
All right. Maybe it's my network.
So first of all, to optimize your database layer, number one, you must normalize your database tables up to the third normal form. For those of us who are aware, who know our database, we know that the normalization of tables has three stages. The first normal form, the second normal form, and the third normal form. Usually, the third normal form is an overkill, or as we say, using a sledgehammer to kill an ant. But if you can get your database normalized to the point where you don't need a third normal form, you are good to go. Normalizing a database removes redundancies and duplicates from your tables. In other words, no two tables should be containing the same data. And also, tables are linked properly. Number two step of optimization is to index all search columns. If you are going to use your slug for searching, make it an index. If you are going to use UUID for searching, make it an index. If you are using the title column as well, make it an index. Most times we use the created at and the updated at to search our database tables. It is advisable you make it an index during your migration. Also use raw queries instead of eloquent queries when querying large number of records. There are times when you're working on enterprise systems and you have to query several tables to return certain custom results. It is usually wiser to use raw queries, raw SQL queries for that. Eloquent may not do it for you the way you want, and Eloquent can be very slow. Perform all enumerations and calculations in the query, not after the query. Load your Eloquent relationships wherever you are, whenever you are pulling records. You could also cache your models if the pulling of large data is not frequent. Cache it so that, assuming the data is not changing, make sure you cache it so that when the user is pulling that data, it will come out like it never has, and it will not need to hit the database to get the same records. Now, there has been a debate, DB facade, Eloquent. Truth is that the Eloquent model makes accessing the database very easy. But another truth is that the DB facade is faster. Only difference between them is that only major difference between them aside speed is that the DB facade is not always readable. So for readability, we use Eloquent. But if you are banking on speed, use DB facade. Please do not mind my last sentence in that number 7. Use what suits you and also make whoever inherits your code to be happy with you and not lay curses on your descendants and ancestors. Forgive me, I had to include that because There are some codes you look at, you start asking, was this done by a developer or it was done by a bricklayer who is just learning on the job? Another thing you can do to optimize your DB layer is, instead of accessing your model directly, use a repository layer to interact with your database. That way you can abstract, you can separate concerns from your application and the database. Instead of, and the use of the DP facade can also be easier for you. So the second layer is the service layer or the application layer. The application layer includes the classes that you write, where you write your business logic, your calculations, do this, do that, give me this data, give me that data, perform such operations on such data, and so on. It is the logic that carries out all those general applications of for your application. You can also connect them with the repository layer to send and retrieve data from the database. Now, how do you optimize the service layer? Number one, cache your routes. Number two, reduce autoloaded services. One of the strengths of Laravel is using use of service providers. Disable the ones that you don't need. When Laravel loads up, it loads every single service provider that you have on your system: the event service provider, app service provider, view service provider, and so on. If load what you need depending on the type of application you are developing. If you are developing a REST API, for instance, you don't require a view service provider or a session service provider. Disable those ones and your application will load faster. Another thing you can do is reduce package usage. Don't use a package if you can use 3 lines to implement the same thing. For instance, there is really no point using the Spaxy media library package for uploading of files and so on. If you could easily use the upload method on the request class. Use queues for actions that will take more than 30 seconds to execute. If you are uploading my 30,000 records, for instance, it is not wise to do it directly. Use queues, create jobs, and dispatch them so that they can be working at the background while the user does other things. Recently, it's easy to send notifications from the back end to the front end. Still on the service layer, use the latest version of Laravel. Let me put a caveat here because you know that every new version has its bugs. So I would say don't be too quick to use the new version. Currently, the latest version of Laravel is version 10. And I can tell you truthfully that I've not started using it for any of my projects. I'm still using 9. And the only time I can start using 10 is a few months after, when all testimonies have come from the right sources that version 10 is safe to use for your project. Also, separate concerns in number 6. Apply the S in solid. S there means separation of concerns. What that means is that your classes should do one thing and one thing only. For instance, you should not do registration. You cannot do registration, or rather authentication, and you should not do authentication and say loan processes in one class. It's either you have an authentication class for registration and login, or you have another separate class for performing your loan processes. So apply the S. Classes when separated into concerns, load faster. Don't combine purposes. Number 7, keep your code dry. In other words, don't repeat yourself. This is where you use traits. Traits are used to hold methods that can be used in 2 or more classes. And it is also the first step to clean code. You can also apply the adapter and repository methodologies. The adapter methodology makes use of services and interfaces, while the repository methodology is an abstraction of the adapter methodology, but this time your repository handles every logic that has to do with your database. This will help your controllers to be clean. Clean code helps in creating optimized code. Another thing is avoid fancy coding. In my experience, I've come to understand that people who don't have basic computer programming knowledge, I mean, languages like assembly and C, don't really know how code works at the background. So they tend to want to use fancy codes and stuff like that. I give an instance here. 1.0 plus 1.0 executes slower than 1 plus 1. But because computers are faster these days, we don't know this difference in speed. We should apply keys to our coding. Keep it short and sweet. Yeah, I know that I understand that fancy coding makes us look like rock stars. You know, you puts up the facade of a professional. But I think a functional code is better than a fancy code. Now, another way to increase your application speed is to use less helper methods. Use less helper methods. If you can avoid it totally, please do. The computer does more work before executing a helper method and less work when executing a class method. For instance, Laravel executes the auth class faster than the auth method or the auth helper method. Then another aspect of this number 9 is use of memory. Your RAM, the optimum use of your RAM space is very important. Helper methods live on the RAM, but classes don't. The way the application runs is that classes load only when needed. And after you finish using them, they get destroyed and removed from memory. But some helper methods stay in memory and appear to be fast, which is why when you want to do other processes, they take longer because the computer now has to remove what it is not using from memory to now put what it needs to use. Number 10, this goes for us back-end developers. Your API endpoint should not be overloaded with unnecessary data. Use resource objects. Know when the type of API you are developing. If you are going to be, for instance, we are using Zoom. Zoom uses a lot of APIs. And in this case, we are using the API for handling video and audio transmission. Zoom will not use REST API for this purpose. Zoom will be using RPC because the data is large and needs to be sent quickly. So don't use a REST API for endpoints that requires RPC or SOAP. So the next layer where you need to optimize is the user interface layer, which is your front end. This is the part the user sees and uses to interact with your application. You can describe it as a receptionist or front desk officer in any establishment. Usually beautiful women, which is your UI, are placed here. But another additional trait that you must have is exceptional customer or client relationship, which is what we call UX, user experience. What this means is that it must be up and doing and be able to respond as required and as fast as possible. For optimizing the user interface layer, compress your images, that is, use PNG images or SVG. Bitmaps are large, JPEGs are equally large. So you can either use PNG images or you use SVG. Use a CDN to load your assets. The content delivery network is better than loading your assets directly from your database. You achieve two things. One, the data on your server rather. You achieve two things. One, it loads faster because it's using a CDN and it can load from any server that is closest to the user at that point in time. Two, you make use of you release space on your server. Instead of storing that file locally, you now have to get it from a CDN. Number three, you can minimize your JS and CSS code. What it means is remove all unneeded spaces. You recognize a minimized JS or CSS file when you open it and everything is on one line. I remember my shock when I started coding and I opened the bootstrap.css and bootstrap.js file. Discovered that everything was on one line and I was like, are you sure these people know what they're doing? But it was when I understood what mixins are, minimizing the JS and CSS code. That's when I understood what they did. Bundle all your assets. Use your Laravel mix to bundle all your assets into an app.js or app.css file. Also, minify your HTML as well. When you minify it, the code is simpler and can be broken down into pieces. And it also loads faster on your server. So finally, you can use different tools to monitor your application's performance. One of them is Blackfire, Laravel Dust, LoadForge, and Scout API package. It's interesting that these services are not free. But they are worth every penny you spend, especially if it is for an enterprise application. In conclusion, Laravel application optimization cannot be overemphasized. Nobody likes a slow website. A slow website isn't just irritating, it is frustrating. It can also cost you customers, as the case may be. Optimize your application today, and you will be the better for it. Thank you very much. So I am open to questions. I hope I didn't get to bore you people to death. Hello? Hello? Anybody there?
Hello, sir. Yeah, I'm here, sir.
So any questions?
I have no more questions. I just wanted to know, like, an example of content delivery network.
Bootstrap. Bootstrap is on a CDN. One other example is a Cloudflare. A CDN is basically a server where you host, where publicly available resources are hosted for people to access. So one good example is Cloudflare. There are many others actually.
Okay, so that'll be all from my end. But it will actually I'll highly appreciate it if we can have access to your slides, sir. Is that possible, sir?
It's very possible.
Okay, sir.
I can send it to the organizers.
Okay, sir. Can I send you? Should I send you my email address?
All right.
Okay, sir. I I think I don't know what happened to Patrick's device, so it's not available. Okay, Patrick is back.
Hello, Patrick, are you here?
Hello, sir. I already sent my email address into the chat box.
Okay. Sorry,
I'll
I
send the email.
got disconnected for a
Okay,
while.
thank you, sir.
Okay. Am I on now?
Yeah, you are.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Donald is done with his presentation, even though I missed the bulk of it.
Yeah. I'm waiting for questions.
Okay. Okay. Let me go ahead. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen.
It's not up yet,
Okay.
but
How about
you're
now?
still sharing. You should. No, not yet.
Network is quite terrible. Okay, what about now?
It might be my network. I think others should give feedback too.
Just showing a blank screen. He said you have
Yeah,
started.
exactly. I can see a blank screen. Patrick Kudo has started sharing. That's what I can see.
Okay, it's still loading, though. I just checked. I want to reshare it and let's see. It's going to work fine. I'm trying to load my presentation. It's not even loading. That's the issue. Maybe I should just share it on the chat. Anybody can try from their end if they can access it. Okay, I'll just do that. Actually, your system is on, right? You're on your system, right? Hello, Victory.
Yeah, I'm on my system.
Okay, I'll just share the link to the file. So let me see if you can load it from your end.
Okay. Yeah, I can load it. Let me share.
Okay, can you share your screen? Let me use your screen for
Sure.
presentation. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to see which I should click on. Okay. Can we see my screen?
Log me out again.
Is my screen up?
Yes, it's up. Yeah, I can see it. Okay, thanks. But this is not the first. Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're correct. Okay, so like this is like a brief summary of what Mr. Donald said. Fortunately for me, is should I say is my guy at the top? He has been a developer for over 7 years. Yeah. So me, I'm still an upcoming, 3 years thereabouts. Okay, so I'll be giving my little bit on performance optimization in Laravel. Okay, next slide, please. Like I said, it's just an overview or like collaborating what he has already said about it. So basically, I'm Patrick Kudo, you know that already. Yeah, I'm a market developer at Bincom. Then you can find me at my LinkedIn. So what is performance optimization in a simple sentence? You can go to the next slide, slide 4. And you can put it on slideshow, I guess, so that it looks better. Don't worry if you can't do that, I don't know. Okay, slideshow, look at it here. Okay, thank you. So performance optimization is basically the process of making an application. It could be mobile, it could be web, making it efficient, making it run smoothly and rapidly, like not taking time. Yeah, so that's just the layman or a simple explanation of what's meant by optimization, performance optimization. So now, of course, Laravel has become one of the popular options for developing business application. So you won't even, when you mention PHP, the next, or one of the famous framework that comes to mind is Laravel. We still have some like CodeIgniter and Symfony that are still very, very much popular. Yeah, so but recently now, even in 2023, statistics, but 2022 statistics, Laravel has become very popular that most PHP developers are using it to develop enterprise applications. So that's the reason why we are actually using Laravel as a particular framework to talk about performance optimization. You can go to the next slide. So now, when we build our projects on Laravel or projects as they were using PHP or Laravel, let's put it that way. So now, there are things that we sometimes forget to do, or there are things that we do that actually cause our cause our application, the performance to be reduced or to affect the performance, simply put. But then we know that performance optimization is actually very helpful in our application, because imagine you're trying to load a website and it's taking forever to load. You're trying to click on a particular button, a particular link, and it's taking forever due to the fact that, of course, you know that it's trying to pull from database or do one thing. You're trying to register on a site and it's taking forever to register. So now, normally users or end users do not like such websites. They do not want to return back to such websites. They, of course, look for alternative, and that's actually a detriment to the business aspect of the website. So that's the reason why performance optimization is something that we should actually look at as developers when we are developing our applications. Okay, so next, I'm just trying to summarize everything instead of reading, so that's why. Okay, now, so I'll be giving out tips or tips on how to optimize our Laravel applications for performance. Okay, next. So the first one is config caching. You can go ahead and next slide. So config caching, it refers to as caching your configurations. Okay, so depending on the application, or the package being used, or Laravel itself comes with a particular cache config folder that contains different configurations. Some belongs to the app, some if you import or if you pull a package, their configuration file, let me put it that way, or code there. So now to cache this configuration file, all you need to do is to run the php assistant config cache. This helps to cache those files so that it does not run every time you are trying to load the application. So once you cache it, anytime the application needs those values, it just goes to the cache and get them. So this actually helps performance in Laravel. Next one, please. So second one is route caching. Can go ahead. So route caching is also it's just similar to config caching, but this time we are actually caching the routes. So now in Laravel we have a route folder where you store your routes. So now you can actually cache this route using this command php artisan route cache, and once you cache it, just like the config, all your routes are actually stored in the cache, such that when you need them again, it does not go back, it does not go to the web, the route folder to look for this route, but then it fetches from the cache. Note, it's good to use cache. Like these commands are good to be run in production mode, but not development mode. The reason being is that in development mode, you are constantly changing your route folder. That is, if you are working with web or front end together, you can use your web or API, depending on what you're working on. But the point is, if you run this command, like I said, php artisan route cache, and you probably add a new route to your project, it's not going to see that route until you clear it out. So the reason why I said it's good to run these cache commands on your production server is because once you push your production server, you are expected not to change anything, or you won't change anything until you do a new push or a merge or something like that before you can actually change. Okay, yeah, the next one. So now, just like Mr. Leonard actually said, I think he mentioned on this point, to remove unused services. So any service you're not using on your application, it's beneficial for you to use it because it's going to also load all the services and thereby affecting the performance. You can go to the next slide. Affecting performance of your application. Okay, I think that's already a summary of it. Yeah, go ahead. So catching queries results. This is actually a very, very important one. Go to the next slide. So now I remember using this one on my application whereby I needed to fetch data from the database, a lot of data, and of course it's going to take time. It's like if every time the user visits a website, that website and they need that details. So all I did was to use this command to catch the result. So I get it. So once you go to the website first, the first time you go to that website on your phone or on your system, and you visit the first time, this is when you visit that page, it might take time to load because that's the first time, but subsequently it's not going to take time because I've actually caged the queries. So the next thing I'm visiting that page on that phone or your device. No, I'm still on the previous slide. Sorry. Okay, so next time you are visiting that page on that same phone or device, it should not take much time, but it shouldn't even take time to run again. It's just going to give it to you because that query or that the results of that query has already been caged in, depending on the cache you use, but then the point is that very been stored and it does not need to run that query again. It just fetch it for you. But it's good to use caching or cache as it might be pronounced when you are not constantly querying the database for results. Yeah, and of course this helps to improve array performance because your application is going to be loading faster because you don't need to go back and fetch every time there is a request. We'll go to the next one. Also, the next point is use of eager loading for data. So now, so go to the next slide. That explains eager loading. So ever since I stumbled on eager loading, this is actually the most significant ones I'm very careful about. I make sure I don't eager load. So I make sure I don't lazy load my relationships. So lazy loading your relationship makes lead to something called N+1 issue, whereby you keep calling your database multiple times when you should not call it. So for instance, you're trying to get book and look through the book and trying to access author, probably the author name from it. It goes back, okay, if this is how it works, it goes to get book one time for you, and then it gets author for that book, then goes back to get the next book, and go back to the next book and get the next author, then the name. It's more like a loop, it keeps going forever like that. Yeah, it causes something called N+1 issue. But then if you use eager loading, of course, creating a relationship in your model class with this. So now using eager loading, all you need to do is use the width, what's it called? Let me say the width keyword, yes, and the name of your relationship in your model. So there's a relationship between the book and the author in the model. That's how we can use this keyword with author. Now this way, now whenever we are calling on book, it comes with author too. So we don't have to go back and fetch it every time we need it, or anytime we are trying to get the author name. So also based on this actually helps performance. Yeah, it's a performance, but then I want us to know that it's not every time you need this eager loading. There are times whereby you just need only book. You don't need to eager load it with author, because eager loading with author, let's say you have 1,000 authors for a particular book, or 1,000 authors for 500 books. So using and you just need a book. So you have 1,000 author for 500 books, and you just need books. So there's that at that instance, you don't need to eager load author, because eager loading in that context is not actually needed. But in the case where you need author actually to be displayed to alongside with the book, then that's actually efficient and faster. The next one, please. Okay, composer optimize auto load. Okay, this is just next slide. So it's always good to auto load your composer file. So this also helps to speed up Laravel performance. Yeah, it's just done simply by composer dump auto load. It's an alias. The next one. Okay, the use of Laravel plug. Next one, please. So now Laravel plug, as the name suggests, extract certain values as suggested. It carry by plugs the information out of the given array and produces it as an output. So basically what it does is that sometimes you might not need everything about a particular table or model. For instance, now I need just name from user. I don't need maybe address. I don't need ID or something like that. Then why should I load all the things from the user model or from user table when I need just name? I don't know if that's clear. So, but then using plug helps you just extract just what you need and present it to your screen. This also helps optimization of yep, this also helps the performance of your application. So the next one. Okay, so now the other ones includes running latest version of PHP. The latest version of PHP, I think PHP 8.2 is currently faster than, sorry, let's just say the latest version of PHP from 8 is actually faster than the previous one. Now using the latest version of PHP will help to make your application faster. Also using the keyword selects, this selects helps you to select only the required columns on your table that you want. For instance, let's say you have about 10 columns on a particular table and you need just 5. Why then what's the need of also loading the remaining 10 that you're not going to ever use on your application? Why not just load 5? Because what if for the 10 you have about, let's say, 10,000 inputs, and now I'm taking it to 5, you might actually have, like, let's say 1,000 or 2,000 depending on it. So that's why it actually helps performance. Also, the use of CDN for delivering static assets. Sometimes it's better to use CDN links to pull in what you want instead of using storing it in your application. Then asset bundling. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I think that's all. Okay. So at this point, I think this is my little inputs based on my years of experience as a library developer on how to actually optimize your library application for a better performance. Thank you. At this point, I'd love to take questions if there are any for me or for Mr. Donald. Thank you, Richie, for helping me present.
You're welcome. Okay, I think I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just said coding Laravel, let's say like a month work, and I'm just like I'm just curious to pace up my learning process on Laravel. Do you have any advice, like where can I get materials that could, like, that will help me learn faster?
Okay, I actually use more of YouTube. The actually Laravel is a very, very big ecosystem currently. It's one of the big ecosystems. So YouTube itself, YouTube, there's a lot of videos on YouTube, free videos that are going to help accelerate the process. But one thing I would advise you to do is to take, you should understand the concepts, understand why this is being used, understand why get is being used instead of first, why plug should be used or when should be used. You should understand the reason why you should prefer collection to array. You should understand, like, getting the concepts is better than you just building a website and not knowing how it works or knowing the okay. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah, better than just building a website, because we need to apply these things again on that website, and then you don't know what to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question. So just check on, there are lots of incredible people here on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Okay, if there are no questions for me, I have a question for Mr. Donald, because actually it's someone I look up to. They have spent so many years in the ecosystem. So Donald, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Before I left for a while, one of your tips for performance, you mentioned that the DB facade is faster than Eloquent. So I would love you to expatiate on that. Like, what's the basis to that? Why do you say so and stuff like that? Just to enlighten me, sir.
The truth is that first of all, Eloquent is an abstract of the DB facade. Eloquent is the DB facade made. But you know, when you add Gary, when you add Rishi to soup, it's no longer what the soup becomes heavier. I don't know whether you understand.
Okay.
So the DB facade is faster because it accesses the query engine direct. But Eloquent needs the DB facade to access the query engine. I don't know if you understand.
Yeah, I do. I do.
So the Eloquent requires DB facade to access your database, but the DB facade accesses your database direct.
Okay.
That's my own understanding.
Okay.
So that's how I can explain it. I think somebody can explain it better.
So my next question is have you ever run a test before whereby you use DB faster than use Eloquent and the time it came for the query to come out, it took
severally, and I can tell you that the only reason why I use Eloquent is laziness.
Okay.
You know, with DB faster, you get to write a lot of queries, including raw SQL queries. But with Eloquent, everything is already there. You have the wheres and the whatever. So with DB faster, even though Eloquent allows you to write raw SQL queries, but with DB faster, it's faster.
Okay.
So I've done it severally, and the only reason I use Eloquent is that time I used to type table name on DB faster. Eloquent already generated it. You understand?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there other questions before we wrap up for today?
Please, any question? I know my session was a bit boring. Patrick has already made it. Questions to be appreciated.
Okay, it's a general question based on, of course, the developer community are always controversial about languages. Even inside PHP itself, there's still controversy. I've actually seen someone saying that library it's not good for development, that they should trash it. Yeah.
Our usual
But,
friend.
yeah, people still prefer Symfony to it. So I want to hear your opinion on that. I don't know if you've ever worked on Symfony before.
Symfony is the foundation of Laravel.
Yeah, have you ever worked with Symfony before, sir?
No, but Symfony is the foundation of Laravel. Laravel is built on Symfony.
Symfony, okay.
That's why you have that namespace illuminate.
Yeah.
On Laravel, it's Symfony. I've not worked on Symfony, and of recent, it has come up in high demand. Recently, I don't know why I've yet to.
Symfony, right?
Yes. The demand is high, the pay is also better.
But okay, what's the experience like? What is the experience like on Laravel so far? Are there any the cons to using Laravel compared to other frameworks that you've ever used?
Well, you know, all frameworks are opinionated.
Yes.
And they are usually the opinions of the creator, what they think this should be, what they think they expect it to be. Even though Laravel is open source, it's not every opinion they accept. So I can say that with Laravel, I'm having fun. Coding is easier, especially creating APIs. I can easily pick up an API in one day to several endpoints. I've also used Lumen. Now, if you are comparing both frameworks, they were created by the same person. Lumen first. If you ask me, if I want to create microservices, I'll use Lumen because Lumen is lighter, Lumen is faster than Laravel. Laravel is heavyweight compared to Lumen. So if you are talking about optimization, Lumen is more optimized. It's just that with Lumen, you really have to work hard. You have to put in all the work. But in Laravel, everything is already done for you. You already have the car. All you need to do is just on the engine, put on the engine, and you're good to go. The Lumen, you have to work everything for yourself, do the setting. Even when you install packages, its own way of what's that now? Its own way of installing packages is different from Laravel. Usually, we go to config the app to register the package. But for Lumen, it's a different thing altogether. And Laravel lately has a auto registration of application of package. Lumen does not have it. But be that as it may, Lumen is faster than Laravel. If you want it easy to use, sharp, get your job done. Laravel.
Okay. Okay. Not to keep people waiting because there are more. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining today. I know there was a mix up in the time, but then you still came to talk to us, and yeah, so I really, really appreciate it. And when I called on you, you did not.
Somebody's hand is up.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. You want to speak? Go ahead. Okay. Make sure you are muted if you are trying to speak.
Okay, no, it's his light. His light
Okay.
looks like a hand.
Okay, don't worry. Okay, so I was trying to round up further. So like I said, I called on Mr. Donald and he did not decline. He actually accepted our invitation and came to talk to us, educate us on performance in Laravel. So I'm really grateful, and I hope he will also love to come for our other events. I don't know what topic is going to be for next time, but then hopefully he will be here to join us again. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for coming. Yeah. And also to my wonderful audience, most of them actually part of the PHP team in the company. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you've learned something today. Actually, I've learned a lot already. So thank you. So
thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Mr. Donald. Really appreciate it, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate the section.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, without any further thing to discuss or deliberate, this will bring us to the end of our event for today. Hopefully, we'll see ourselves again in the next event. Thank you for joining, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.